the co-writer of Brzrkr, also best-selling writer and artist for such graphic novels as Department H, Superfly, Mind Management. He's also written the graphic novel Grass Kings, and he's written comics for DC, Marvel, Valiant, Dark Horse. And in addition, Ron Garney, the artist, celebrated artist, he's written for some of the most popular, he's drawn and written some of the most popular superhero characters in comics, Spider-Man, Silver Surfer, Captain America, and he's also done some film work. He's worked on I Am Legend with Will Smith. So with that, we're going to jump right to it. Keanu, and all of you, welcome to the U.S. Book Show.
Thank you, Calvin. Pleasure to be here.
So Keanu, first, tell us a little bit about the story and the character. But I also want to know, I mean, you've got access to every kind of storytelling strategy in the world. Why comics? So maybe you can combine those two questions for us.
Sure. I grew up loving comics as a kid. You know, you kind of get exposed to them at the dentist's office, or on the bus ride to summer camp. So it was like Richie Rich and Archie comics. They end up in some bedroom with Tintin when you're a kid, and you know, there was something about the kind of way that you could spend time, like the stillness of a comic book image, but that the movement of the imagination of it, and the way that you could see the words, look at the images, and then kind of follow them along. It's, we relate to it as cinema in a way, as much as it's literature. And I guess as a kid, turn the pages. Also, I have to throw a shout out to the fabulous furry Freak Brothers, which was on the other side of the tracks of the Archies and Tintin and Richie Rich. And, as a kid, you're getting, for me, it was like New Mutants, Batman, Superman, the Hulk, Flash, Silver Surfer. I really liked as a kid. And then I kind of stayed into comic books in my teens, and then getting into Frank Miller's Batman, Frank Miller's Wolverine, and then, still staying with X-Men and New Mutants. And, there's tons that I'm probably forgetting. Yeah, so I really, for me it was, even in my early 20s, going to the comic book store on that day and buying a bunch of books. I remember a series called Mage growing up. That was cool. Love and Rockets, the Hernandez brothers. So it really exposed me to kind of, I don't know, storytelling for sure, and imagistic storytelling, and yeah, and comedy and genres, sci-fi. But there was something about just the connection of word and image and the content of a story and storytelling and the way it traveled that I found very engaging, and the interaction with it. It was a really kind of exciting time to get the new comics and to be following these different threads of stories and characters. And so for me, when I met with Boom Studios, the publisher of Brzrkr, when I met with them a few years ago, and pitched them this idea of a character, and when they liked that pitch and then said, "Do you want to make a comic book?" I was like, "Yes, please." And they, they really acted on good faith, because I didn't have a lot of the story. I had a character. Mm-hmm. I had this guy in my head who was immortal, half human, mm-hmm. half god, maybe, with this kind of curse of violence. And, starting from there, and then Boom Studios really put together, you know, the team that I would end up collaborating with. And so for me, the first person who I started to collaborate with on the project was Matt Kent, and working with him and with the studio, we all got together in Los Angeles and sat around for a few days and pitched ideas, and that's really where it started to cohere. And then as Matt Kay and I kind of got into it, it was getting time to draw it, and then Boom Studios reached out to Ron Garney, showed Matt Cagle. Matt knew his work. I had seen his work, but didn't connect it with the name. And then eventually, we, you know, we spoke, and there seemed to be a good feeling and enthusiasm for the project, and that's really where we have the words and the pictures.
I love it. I love
we
it.
also have, you know, Clem Robbins doing the lettering and Bill Crabtree doing the color. And so Boom Studios really helped me kind of realize this vision, this dream with really experienced artists in the field. And I feel really grateful to have the chance to be working with such great artists and trying to tell this story.
Well, no, that's awesome. Well, you've shown that you're a member of the tribe, the comics tribe, for sure. So, but that's a great point for us to jump. I'm going to jump to Matt first, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about getting this project started and you getting involved.
Yeah, my editor's Matt Gagnon, and called me up, and he's like, "Hey, would you be interested in collaborating with Keanu on a comic book?" And I was like, "Well, what's the idea?" Because that's the most important thing, you know, is it a good idea? And he kind of gave me sort of the broad strokes of it, and I was like, "Well, that's interesting enough." I was like, "I'll come out and we'll have a meeting and then see how it goes and everything." And I just stay.
2 issues or the first 2 volumes. Now, this is all going to be out in the fall from Boom Studios, you know, as in a graphic novel. I guess the first of several, I would imagine. We can clarify that. But let's talk with Ron real quickly too. You know, talk about how you came into the project, and you know, I mean, you're bringing this project to life. I mean, you're matching the words, but you've got to give us the visual impact that comics can do. So tell us a little bit about what your role was early on.
That drawing I haven't seen the 2 issues, and I bottles.
All right, figure, but he ends up in today's world, and his power is so unimaginable in some ways. He has the ability to destroy friend and foe. And he's got some pretty interesting friends in this issue too. Now, I don't know what you can talk about in terms of getting to this point in the story, but maybe you can.
Yeah, sure. You know, right now we started off with trying to kind of introduce people to the character of B, and we're kind of telling this, like you say, modern day story. And so basically, B is being studied by a kind of black ops operation. Undercover secret government program, and at the same time they're trying to learn about him physically, and they're finding that through emotions that he has perfect memory, but he's repressed some memories, and they're kind of, this one character, Diana, who's this scientist, is kind of looking into his emotional state, and he's telling the story of his origin story as he remembers it. And so we're going back 80,000 years ago to this tribe of people who were being attacked and had gone to the gods, this husband, wife, man, woman partnership, and asked for some help to the gods. And the mother ends up getting impregnated by this
some power. I love it.
By this force, and is born in 2 moons. And what they find is that their child has a craving for violence, a kind of blood. But they asked for a protector for the tribe. They asked for a weapon, something to help them. And so this boy was born with this, as he's called, a gift. But as he's growing up, he wants to protect the tribe. But that starts to take a kind of turn. His father ends up taking this gift and starting to become exploited in the origin story. And at the same time, the character, as we call him, B, is being studied by the United States, but the character hides in violence. He's compelled to violence. So they're using him for black ops operations and basically having him on a leash and then letting him go. And that's the kind of contract he has. So he can kind of go through this curse that he has that, hide within violence. And so he's kind of using them, and they're saying that with their technology and studying him, they might be able to help him find a way, because he doesn't want to die, but he's looking to remove this curse to have his, I guess, in a way, freedom. And so he thinks that they're studying him for maybe super soldiers and immortality, and he just wants to be free.
Yeah, he's a hero that there's more and more nuance to the character. I mean, the character takes a licking, he delivers a licking. It's an eye-popping spectacle on every page. I'm talking about you, Ron, there. But the words bring it in too. So I'm gonna jump back to Matt.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin, we're just trying. Part of what this character does is we're able to look at different forms of ourselves, right? So,
great.
When does violence become protection? When does it become conquering? How does it turn? Depends on what side of history you're writing or what side of a conflict you are. Mm-hmm. And this character, through 80,000 years, has been on every side, and he, one of the things that I was hoping is that he's not exhausted. He's not bitter. He loves humanity. He doesn't want to kill. But this takes over for him. And so hopefully through the course of the story, we can tell different sides of how we relate to conflict, etc. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's what's interesting to me about the characters, like the way we're portraying the violence. To me, as we were writing it, I started to question, and this is something I've questioned my whole life, is I would never, it does and like what hacking things,
Science and war throughout the book. It's a kick-ass festival, but you grapple with some issues throughout the book.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking with conflict and war is also a kind of innovation, right? A lot of our innovation has come through this propulsion of this intent and feeling, and so part of the things that we do explore is we have a character in the comic book who's tracking some of the technological innovations and migrations that this character, who's been alive for so long, who's gathered and been shown all of this information through traveling, starts to pollinate other cultures and worlds. So that's fun to explore as well. And, the otherness of the character, in a way, he's always the stranger. Once, as we learn in the circumstances of him leaving his home, he becomes a traveler, an immigrant, an other person, an otherness to him. And we also look to investigate, how can he love? There's a human side to him with those passions and desires and questions, and and how does he survive, and how does he love, and who are the people who love him, and what happens in those relationships, and how can they be circumstances. But anyway,
stuff ensues. Well, and obviously, you mentioned earlier there was a doctor studying him, a woman doctor. So we're going to keep an eye on that relationship also. Hey, Ron, violence in pop culture is style. So can you tell us? I mean, Look, this guy is
Man,
kicks ass in all kinds of different ways.
you were just starting to talk about the woman doctor. I was still on that.
Well, you can bring that in too.
She's so pretty.
There you go.
You want me to talk about the violence? Well, it was interesting.
Yeah, coming up. I mean, this warrior. I mean, he brings it.
Yeah, yeah, he sure does.
Brings it.
I mean, you know, the whole thing is fascinating to me anyway. Matt was talking about the moral ambiguity of it all. Never having been in a fight. He does look like a lover, not a fighter, by the way. Yeah, I mean, when you're in a fight, you're not really thinking about all those things. So it is interesting to, you know, and with B, I don't think he's,
Influences. Can I say this? I mean, I detect a little Frank Miller in
oh,
there. I mean, not
yeah. I mean,
but
all those influences come through, you know. I mean, I'm more of an animal that likes to explore the character with references to, you know, use the, oh,
I guess like everybody else, you're on Zoom. How do you tell Keanu Reeves that you got to rewrite some dialogue? Yeah, how does that work?
I tell him it doesn't work.
Okay.
No, usually it's the other way around. Usually I'll come up with a line. And here's what's great is like working with Keanu I've collaborated only a handful of times on writing. And so I think when you collaborate on writing, it's such a personal thing that it doesn't, I don't always want to do that. You know, I think that relationship has to work, you know, and I don't do it very often. So that has to work first of all. But what's great is Keanu brings he's got another toolbox of talents that he brings to comics that I haven't had a chance to work with, which is like line delivery and reading these lines and the dialogue and like staging the action. You know, it's like I can't think of anybody more qualified to work that stuff out. And so we'll just be talking the story back and forth and then I'm just writing up the notes, and then we're kicking in the ideas back and forth, and then he's coming up with lines, I come up with lines, and then when we put the thing together, what's great is then we'll go through it, and then Keanu he'll do the line readings, and hearing those lines out loud, it's like, you can hear right away whether the lines are working or not, and then it's, at that point it's like I don't know who wrote what, but you can kind of tell that doesn't work, and then we just kick it back and forth and try to come up with a better line. And no, it's a true collaboration, and it's writing is such a personal thing, and so to collaborate or to share that is like it's not easy to do, and you have to trust the other person so much to be able to say something that may be dumb when it comes out of your mouth and you don't realize it doesn't matter, you know. It's like you keep talking it out, keep working it out, and then until the best idea rises up, you know. That's just kind of how, at least that's how I feel it works.
You're both like different ends of the world trying to make this work too. When do you bring Ron into the matrix, if I may say so?
Yeah, so we've written right now we've got 5 scripts of 12, and we send the scripts to Ron, and for me the process has been here's a script, we send it to the Boom Studios team, and we send them to Ron. We wait for feedback, and then we'll adjust the script, any feedbacks, and then on issue 1 and 2, and then Matt Kay and I will get sent some images from Ron to look at, and then comment, and then we give feedback to our editor, Eric Harburn, and then once that happens, then it starts to go to color, and then we'll look at that layer, and then it'll go to the letters and Clem, and then we'll comment on that. And as we're now working on issue 3, for me, we've gotten some feedback in speaking with Ron, and we've started to make adjustments, and also now, and Matt Kay told me this as we were going, he's like, let's just keep the dialogue for now, and we'll see how it gets drawn. And so now that dialogue, that ball has been rolling now where we're reacting to Ron's drawing and reformatting, and then Ron has said, "Hey guys, can I have some more space?"
I love it. That's
and so I'm like, "Oh shit!" So like on issue 4, when we were looking at the script, I was like, and reformatting, and then Ron has said, "Hey guys, can I have some more space?"
I love it. That's
and so I'm like, "Oh shit!" So like on issue 4, when we were looking at the script, I was like, Matt, we got to give Ron some more space.
right.
And I totally agree.
Yeah.
And then Matt K goes,
Don't throw me under the bus.
Right.
There you go. This is what I'm talking about. This is what the dynamics.
yeah. So because to be fair, and it's been really cool, Ron, is because I don't know how it is working with other writers, but I have certain images in my head and certain things, and working with Matt, we come up like, we were finding a house that B would live in. So sometimes in our scripts we do a lot of suggestions of art directions sometimes, and Matt will do drawings and certain conceptuals, and it's really for Ron to like say, okay, I'll take that or I won't take it, or but Ron's been really cool with like taking what we're doing and then creating his voice, what he's doing, and I'm trying to hear what he's doing, see what he's doing, and then adjust to sometimes how we're writing to react to that,
Yeah. I think what's interesting, issue 5, like I think we had to build like a comfort level too of like learning how to work together, and I think that too. So
in a lot of ways are kind of at the center of pop culture and movie making these days. But there's always this worry, I think, on the comic side of the authenticity of the project. How involved, and it's really great to hear how intrinsic you are to the project, Keanu. The interplay, the back and forth between. I think that's really important. I think for the fans to see how this project comes to life. That's my speech. Anyway, feel free to respond or not.
Yeah, I like your speech. I like living. Hopefully, yeah. It's been great to go through this experience again with these people, and with Ron and with Matt K and Ron. I hope we're like we're trying.
You're working it. You guys are working it.
These guys are waiting for me to say something. It sounds like, I can see the look on his face. Yeah, that's pretty much what they said. Yeah, it is true. I did come to Keanu and say, "Hey, man, I'm choking over here, man. I need more space." But but at the end of it, I can see why. Prediction is there'll be. But there was a couple panels, like one page, and my prediction is there'll be more issues.
I love it.
Wrong, but yeah.
Is that a request?
We'll see.
This is good. I feel like I'm in the middle of one of your sessions right now. Good.
But there was a couple panels, like one page, and it had 4 different battle scenes with different armies in the panels, and I'm like, with an electron microscope trying to draw the figure, because there's so much going on, and that's where I was like, I need a little bit of room there. But as far as the spreads and things coming up and stuff, it's difficult for me to do it until I start drawing, because a lot of stuff happens in the process of actually illustrating. I can read it, visualize it, but once you start laying it down on the page is where things start to really come to life and happen. It takes on a life of its own. So because no matter what, when you're first reading it, that's the idea, okay? But once you put it on the paper, that's where the 3-dimensionality of it all starts to come in, and you have to move things around and fit it, and it's really so there's a lot that goes on when you're crafting the page, and you have to know so many different things. When you illustrate, you have to be a good draftsman. You have to be good at figure work and perspectives and all these different things come into play. And sometimes when you run into panels and arrangements of panels that require that information for the viewer to look, and there's not the room, you really have to find clever ways around it. So that's where the drawing comes in. So once I get into it, I'm sure it'll all unfold the way it's supposed to. Matt actually did a nice little layout in one of the books. I haven't seen too much of his art, but it's interesting to see some of the sketches and things he's done, and to see a little bit farther than I wanted to. So I pared it back just a bit.
I mean, many of his books he draws himself. So did that come into play? Apparently it did, Matt.
Yeah. I think every once in a while there's an idea that we come up with, and it's just it's actually just faster and easier to draw it out or sketch it out than seeing or what and seeing how like Ron was and sort of right in.
There you go.
And at least that's what I try to do. It should get easier and better as we go.
I knew I felt something going along.
That's right.
Matt,
it was real big. I felt tiny inside.
There you go. Yeah, the inner Ron Garney. Yeah. So
yeah, you don't want to go there.
Yeah, this project, it's building an audience methodically. I mean, just briefly. I mean, it started as a Kickstarter project that was like an explosion of interest. I think it raised over $1 million or something, whatever. Boom Studios is bringing it out, but it's also supposed to be anime and a film. So Keanu, can you talk to us a little about it? And when you say anime and not animated film, I assume this is going to have some of the characteristics of Japanese animation.
Yeah, for sure. So we ended up with a really cool partnership with Netflix, and so right now we're looking to. They're excited about supporting and helping to create a feature film and to work with their anime artists. And so we're not too far down the road on that. Besides, we've been sent some conceptuals and some companies and stuff to look at, but we haven't. That's where we're at with that right now, and for me, I'm excited by the idea of doing an anime and where the Brzrkr story can take different artists and different times. And, I don't want to just keep, the movie I'm not thinking will be like a feature film version of the comic book, but they will be connected. I mean, I want them to share the same story for the character, kind of the rules of it, but what you do with that sandbox of Brzrkr, I'm interested to see what other artists or even just where Matt Kay and I go with it, or other writers, and I'm really grateful for the response and the support for this character, and the stories that hopefully we can be a part of telling that would be entertaining.
Hey,
think about, have some fun.
Well, you know what? I think you're pretty good at all of that stuff. So look, this is probably a good time as any to kind of wind this down. It's running out of time. Look, I've been fortunate enough to be able to read some of it. I'm excited about it. Matt, good to see you. Look, all of you, thanks for being a part of the U.S. Book Show, PW's effort, the virtual trade book show. And thank you all for being here. And we look forward to seeing Brzrkr in bookstores in the fall from Boom Studios. Thank you.
Thank
Ron,
you.
Matt, and Keanu. This has been